Greetings, Remnant Church and online friends. Welcome to the Midweek Refuel, where we seek out the ancient traditions simply because modern traditions can't decide whether everything is awesome or everything is doomed. Apparently, we're on the brink of a civil war, a world war, a European civil war, a Pacific showdown, a Middle Eastern powder keg, a Balkan flare-up, a border collapse, an economic apocalypse, 3 constitutional crises, and, if you read the comments sections, a good old-timey crusade for good measure. Depending on which expert you listen to, the dollar is finished, democracy is finished, the West is finished, or humanity itself is on its final software update. Scroll for 5 minutes a day, and you'll get whiplash. One headline screams collapse. The next celebrates progress, like we've reached the summit of human enlightenment. So it's either flames or fireworks. So which is it? Is the world fine, or is the world finished? Chesterton steps into that argument and says, you are both tourists. He says the optimist is window shopping and the pessimist is looking for the exit. One is browsing the gift shop of existence. The other is checking the emergency lighting and asking where the stairwell is. But the world is not a hotel you check out of when the service disappoints you. It's not Yelp for reality. It's not a 3-night stay where you leave a review because the culture wasn't to your taste and the moral climate control felt inconsistent. It's not some cosmic resort where you can check out any time you like. When the music changes, or the neighbors get loud, or the headlines get weird, and man, they have. You don't get to grab your rolling suitcase, mutter about the management, and go find a better universe down the street. It is a fortress. And the more battered the fortress is, the less you get to leave. And if that sounds heavy, it's supposed to. You don't abandon a fortress because the walls are cracked. You defend it because they are cracked. You don't desert your homeland because it's wounded. You fight because it is your homeland. Tonight's lesson is called Cosmic Patriot because Chesterton says something radical. You don't admire the world before you belong to it. You belong to it first. You don't stand outside existence evaluating whether it deserves you. You were born inside of it. You had fought for the flag before you even enlisted. And that's the line that wrecked me. My parents taught me clearly loyalty before admiration. They taught me you don't quit things when they get hard. You don't abandon your people because you're disappointed. But I won't pretend I've always lived that perfectly. I haven't. I've made choices that were not loyal. I've evaluated when I should have committed. I felt the pull to detach when the walls felt cracked. But this I know, I've made the choice often enough now, both right and wrong, and I've seen the consequences clearly enough now that it makes perfect sense to me. I've seen what detachment produces. I've seen what happens when you hover instead of plant your feet in the soil. And I've seen what happens when you say quietly, this is my post. I know this is true. You belong before you ever admire. You were enlisted before you formed an opinion. And once you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. Let me explain this so a doctor and a kindergartner can both nod along. You don't admire your mother before you belong to her. A newborn baby does not cross his little arms in the nursery and say, I'm going to need to see a resume, I believe. I'll commit once I've evaluated her long-term performance. That baby belongs before he has vocabulary, and we all know it. Now, let's raise it. You don't admire oxygen before you breathe it. Nobody here conducted a peer-reviewed study before taking their first breath. You didn't float in midair thinking to yourself, I'm going to withhold judgment on gravity for the time being. You were already in. You were already held. You were already bound. Belonging precedes admiration. And here's the funny part. We all know this in the small things. But when it comes to existence itself, suddenly we become Yelp reviewers of reality. 2 stars, too much suffering, management unclear. And Chesterton just looks at that and says to us, you're not a reviewer, you're enlisted. And when I say enlisted, I'm not talking about a campaign slogan. I'm talking about citizenship. Every nation out there demands loyalty. Every nation out there has a flag. Every nation has borders. Every nation has enemies. Every nation requires sacrifice. And Scripture says we belong to a kingdom, not metaphorically, not emotionally, legally, covenantally. We are citizens of that kingdom. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. If you understand nationalism at all, if you understand what's happening in the world around us, real nationalism, then you understand that loyalty comes before comfort. You don't stay loyal to a nation because it's perfect. You stay loyal because it's yours. And covenant with God is the highest expression of that basic instinct. Because this kingdom is not temporary. It is not collapsing. It is not up for re-election. This kingdom is eternal. And I've heard people say, well, I didn't choose to be born. They're right. You didn't. You didn't choose your century. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose your genetics. You didn't choose this moment in history. You were placed here. Now, here's the fork in the road. One path says, I didn't choose this, so I owe nothing. The other path says, I didn't choose this, so it must be a gift. Those are not small differences, folks. If existence is an accident that has been forced upon you, then loyalty does feel oppressive. But if existence is a gift that has been entrusted to you, then loyalty feels natural in that moment. You didn't enlist in your own birth. You were drafted by reality. Think about it. But you do choose whether to desert your post. And that's the difference. The problem isn't that we don't know this instinctively. I think we do. Even a child understands belonging before admiration. The problem is that the world does an excellent job at helping us forget that fact. Everything around you whispers detachment. Advertisement tells you satisfaction is your highest loyalty. Politics tells you that outrage is your highest loyalty. Social media tells you performance is your highest loyalty. Entertainment tells you escape is your highest loyalty. None of those requires you to stay. They all train you to hover, to evaluate, to keep your options open. And that posture bleeds into everything in your life. Marriage becomes optional. Church becomes optional. Community becomes optional. Truth becomes optional. Even existence, Lord help us, becomes optional. And I feel that pull too, the pull to evaluate, to give stars instead of actually steward a thing. The pull to detach when things get a little difficult. The pull to hover above things instead of plant my feet into them. But I have made the choice often enough now in my life, and I have seen the consequences of both clearly enough now that it makes perfect sense. Detachment weakens you, loyalty steadies you. Hovering fragments you, belonging anchors you. Whether I live it perfectly or not, I know it is true. You belong before you admire. You were enlisted before you formed an opinion. And once you see this clearly, you cannot unsee it. That is what Chesterton means by a cosmic patriot. Not someone who thinks the world is perfect. Not someone who thinks the world is doomed. But someone who says quietly and firmly, this is my post. This is my fortress, and I do not desert it simply because it is cracked. If this kind of teaching helps you think more clearly and love more deeply, I'd ask you humbly to help truth travel a little further. These platforms run on signals, and something as simple as liking, subscribing, or sharing helps push conversations like this through the algorithm and into places they might not otherwise reach. I don't take that lightly, and I am grateful for those of you who partner with me in this way. Now, if you have your copy of Orthodoxy, go ahead and open it to chapter 5, and let's read together and hear Chesterton in his own words. When I was a boy, there were two curious men running about who were called the optimist and the pessimist. I constantly used the words myself, but I cheerfully confess that I never had any very special idea of what they meant. The only thing which might be considered evident was that they could not mean what they said. For the ordinary verbal explanation was that the optimist thought this world as good as it could be, while the pessimist thought it as bad as it could be. Both these statements being obviously raving nonsense. One had to cast about for other explanations. An optimist could not mean a man who thought everything right and nothing wrong, for that is meaningless. It is like calling everything right and nothing left. Upon the whole, I came to the conclusion that the optimist thought everything good except the pessimist, and that the pessimist thought everything bad, except himself. It would be unfair to omit altogether from the list the mysterious but suggestive definition said to have been given by a little girl. Quote, "An optimist is a man who looks after your eyes, and a pessimist is a man who looks after your feet." Unquote. I am not sure that this is not the best definition of all. There is even a sort of allegorical truth in it, for there might perhaps be a profitable distinction drawn between that more dreary thinker who thinks merely of our contact with the earth from moment to moment, and that happier thinker who considers rather our primary power of vision and of choice of road. But this is a deep mistake in this alternative of the optimist and the pessimist. The assumption of it is that a man criticizes this world as if he were house hunting, as if he were being shown over a new suite of apartments. If a man came to this world from some other world in full possession of his powers, he might discuss whether the advantage of midsummer woods made up for the disadvantage of mad dogs, just as a man looking for lodgings might balance the presence of a telephone against the absence of a sea view. But no man is in that position. A man belongs to this world before he begins to ask if it is nice to belong to it. He has fought for the flag and often won heroic victories for the flag long before he has ever enlisted. To put shortly what seems the essential matter, he has a loyalty long before he has any admiration. In the last chapter, it has been said that the primary feeling that this world is strange and yet attractive is best expressed in fairy tales. The reader may, if he likes, put down the next stage to that bellicose and even jingo literature which commonly comes next in the history of a boy. We all owe much sound morality to the penny dreadfuls. Whatever the reason, it seemed and still seems to me that our attitude towards life can be better expressed in terms of a kind of military loyalty than in terms of criticism and approval. My acceptance of the universe is not optimism. It is more like patriotism. It is a matter of primary loyalty. The world is not a lodging house at Brighton, which we are to leave because it is miserable. It is the fortress of our family, with the flag flying on the turret. And the more miserable it is, the less we should leave it. The point is not that this world is too sad to love or too glad not to love. The point is that when you do love a thing, its gladness is a reason for loving it, and its sadness a reason for loving it more. All optimistic thoughts about England and all pessimistic thoughts about her are alike reasons for the English patriot. Similarly, optimism and pessimism are alike arguments for the cosmic patriot. You didn't choose to be born. You were placed. And if this world has left you feeling lost, and it can, or bruised, it will, or quietly exhausted from trying to assemble an identity out of opinions and approval, then hear this clearly. You are not self-created. You were known before you were named, called before you ever performed, claimed before you impressed anyone. The world will rate you. It will count your clicks It will measure your relevance. Turn relationships into transactions and affection into social credit. 5 stars, 3 stars, no stars. As if your worth can be averaged, as if your soul can be scored. And when you live under that system long enough, you start to believe you are only as valuable as your last performance. But Scripture says something better. Your identity is not chosen. Your identity is given to you, not by a crowd, not by a trend, not by an algorithm. Your identity is given to you by a king. You are a citizen of his kingdom. You were stationed in this moment, entrusted with this life. You do not hover above existence, waiting to be vindicated. You stand inside it, already claimed. So let the world keep its stars and its ratings. You have something better. You have a name. Let the crowd keep its ratings. You have a calling. Stand your post. Stand in your place. Stand in the identity that you were given. Because this fortress belongs to the King. Christ is King. Hail to the King.